I am 74 years old and I have had 2 near-death experiences in my life. I thought as a child that many people would have this experience, but it was not to be. I feel very fortunate that these experiences have given me clarity about my purpose in life. Let's start with my first experience, when I was only 7 years old. Even to this day, I can remember every detail very clearly. We had a very large ginkgo tree in our yard, which was planted by my great-grandfather. It was very beautiful every time it came to winter. When I was little I was very naughty and I used to love to climb this tree. My mother warned me many times not to climb the tree, it was very dangerous to do so. One time, my mother was cleaning the house. I was secretly ready to climb the tree again. This time I fell from the tree. My head fell to the ground. I slowly lost consciousness. Suddenly, I appeared over the house. I saw my mother running out of the house and she was very frightened. She hugged me and kept crying, and later I was taken to the hospital. My mother told me later that I was in a coma for 2 days before I woke up. For many years, I never told anyone about my experience. This experience opened the door to God for me and allowed me to have some amazing experiences. I didn't realize until recently that what I experienced was a very special gift. The second experience was when I was 32 years old and my second child was born. I was ready to have my house refurbished. I had just lost my job at the time and I was ready to renovate the house myself. My wife suggested digging a pool in the yard. That way the kids wouldn't have to go outside if they wanted to swim. It was an afternoon and I was moving dirt with a mini excavator. I heard a voice warning me, "Jump in the truck." I've been driving excavators for many years, and I've never thought about jumping off a backhoe, especially when it's moving. But I jumped anyway. I fell face first to the ground. I didn't think I was hurt and was ready to stand up and check the excavator for damage. That's when I realized I couldn't stand up and I was pinned down by the excavator's fall protection frame. Then I realized I was having trouble breathing and I knew I was going to die. I told God that I didn't want to die like this. I wanted to lie in my wife's arms with my children and grandchildren around me. I started screaming for help. But no one heard me. My wife had taken the children to her mother's house because the house had recently been renovated. I had to calm myself down and try to adjust my breathing. It was getting harder to breathe. I pleaded with God not to let me die, but I knew I could not hold on much longer. I asked God to forgive me for all my sins. I said goodbye to my family in my heart and told them I loved them. I had no more strength left and I slowly closed my eyes. I knew this was the end for me. That's when I heard a voice say, "Go and find the light." I saw a light in the distance. It was only a short distance away from me. But what I saw wasn't a tunnel, it was more like a particularly large funnel that was spinning around and around. Angels were all around it. It looked like an upside-down tornado. I thought, this must be the entrance to heaven. As I entered the tube, I thought I heard my wife's voice. I didn't hear what she said. Her voice was not quite the same as usual, and I couldn't tell what was different. It was as if all the angels were shouting with her. I felt pulled out again. I was back in my body again. My back felt awful. I shouted for help, but no one answered me. I was desperate and prayed hard for God to help me. What a great comfort it was when I heard my wife's voice. She heard my cries for help and came running. She called for help. Later my wife told me, she felt something bad was going to happen and rushed right back. It was as if someone was warning her in advance. After a while, I heard the ambulance and I was glad. My wife told them to hurry up, every second counts. They called a lot of people to get me out. They cut my clothes off. I heard one of them say, "My God, look at his spine." I was carried to the ambulance. Throughout the whole process, there was a pair of hands that kept lifting my back. Those hands never moved. I was thinking that these hands could be the hands of God. When we got to the hospital, they were ready to perform surgery. I asked them to give me something to help me breathe. I was having trouble breathing. They told me that I had to wait for the test results to come back first. When the test results came back, everyone was staring at me. I did not have a lot of physical damage, only muscle damage. They told me to stay in the hospital for some time for observation. My wife told me, all the family members came. It was very comforting to know that so many people came to see me. I also felt sad that I could not see them. The hospital only allowed 2 visitors to stay in the room. My family was praying for me constantly and it meant a lot to me. On the day I was discharged, the doctor turned to me on the way out and said, "You're a lucky guy." It didn't take long for me to go home, and I don't think I had any fear of death from my experiences as a child. A year later, a relative of mine was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I went to visit her in the hospital. She asked me, "What does it feel like to die?" I told her about my experience. After listening, she said, my story helped her a lot. She passed away the next night. Since that night, I have been using my story to help those who need help. I also use it to help patients who are worried about death. I've gotten very positive feedback from families.